Vikings have a private meeting scheduled with Jayden Daniels. Does that mean anything, or is that just a bunch of smoke? Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast.
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Locked On Vikings podcast, where we're always trying to learn something new. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And thank you so much to those of you who listen to this show every single day. My hashtag everydayers. I appreciate y'all so very much. You guys make this thing go. If you are new here, maybe you'll be an everydayer someday. All you got to do is search out this show anywhere you find your favorite podcasts. They're uploaded Monday through Friday mornings, whether that's on any podcasting app like the Sirius XM app, YouTube, or even Amazon Fire and Roku. Just download the Locked On Minnesota Sports app. Today, the episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. It's $150, win or lose. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. Today on the show, I'm going to update you on a little bit of quarterback stuff. We're going to dip back into the news of the hour for a show. But I want to talk a little bit more about like the decision-making process, because Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah spoke to the media. And a lot of the questions were, of course, about like trading up and keeping your options open and all that stuff. And the way he talked about it got me thinking. And I think it's just good to like talk about the idea of making a decision under uncertainty. It's the nomenclature Kwesi likes to use. We are not sure what is going to happen. How do you make a choice, like what to offer in a trade up, when you don't know who's even going to be available, and maybe some of these negotiations are happening before you even know how you feel about all these guys, let alone whether or not they're going to work out, which we don't get to know for years. So how do we deal with that? And plus the idea of like draft visits and stuff. So the impetus for this was when I woke up this morning and I saw the news from Ian Rappaport, who said that the Vikings have scheduled a private meeting with Jayden Daniels, and they hadn't done that yet. The fact that they hadn't done that yet would have been fairly interesting, because it would kind of mean that they're really anticipating that Jayden Daniels will not be there. Like, they don't have this same thing with like Caleb Williams, right? They met with him at the combine. They did a little bit of work on him just in case, right? But because everybody is so certain and sure that Caleb Williams is going to be a Bear at number 1 overall and nobody's going to move him off of that, why waste your time on anything more in depth? And if the same treatment were applied to Jayden Daniels, maybe we could say, okay, probably means he's a Commander at 2, and they're not going to move off of that. And now they've decided that. So the real draft, and the Patriots are kind of on the clock now, right? And now we start getting into the what are they going to do? Are they going to trade down and stuff? Which, by all of the reports of like the more official, the Albert Breers at SI, the Rappaports, the Tom Pelisseros, have basically said, we have no idea what New England's going to do now, where they were like really sure before that New England wasn't going to trade down. So I think at this point, we're just kind of strapping in and watching whatever this movie shows us. I don't know if we can do any better speculation than blind guessing, which is kind of fun in its own right. But I digress. The idea of meeting with that player, I think too often we are in like private workouts season. We're in like that chapter of the draft process where you're getting together with all these people. The Vikings are having private meetings. They've had them all with all the quarterbacks that they have access to, right? They've had them with Daniels and May and JJ McCarthy. They flew out to Michigan for McCarthy's. They had one with Penix where they flew out to Washington. I think they met with Nix way earlier in the process. So they've had all of this. And something that kind of bugs me is a lot of people will react to that news as if it is news that, oh, they must be really high on this guy. They're going to wine and dine him as though it's a free agent meeting, right? Which it's like that player doesn't have any control over where he goes, which is kind of a problem with the draft, but that's a different conversation. These private meetings are information gathering, right? And when you are uncertain, when you have no idea how good a guy is, we're not deferring to consensus. Right? We probably don't want teams to just look at what consensus is and be like, well, we'll follow that board. Like, they're doing their own work. They've hired people whose jobs are only this. They've got a whole apparatus of scouts and everything like that. You would hope that they have a process that's a little better than like, let's see what the media guys are saying. And I think we have to consider like where we all get our information from, right? Like if you aren't one of the, like a draft person who's like making a big board and a draft guide and all that stuff. If you are one of those people and you're listening to this show, hi, thanks. Cool. Good for you. But I'm assuming you're not one of those people, that you're not picking up college tape and watching it. And you're not, going and doing your own. Maybe you watched a lot of college film or a lot of college games on TV over the course of the season. And like, that's where you're getting your opinions. But I think a lot of it is we are creatures of the crowd, and whatever the narrative on a guy is generally how we're going to start feeling about it. And honestly, that's not that bad of a heuristic if you're not going to like go through painstaking hours and hours and hours of grinding tape to find your own opinions, right? Wisdom of crowds is okay, and you're probably going to be on fairly safe ground because if you're wrong, at least everyone else was wrong too, right? Like that's fine. And I'm not here to like scold anyone for like not doing enough work or whatever, but if you're just like a fan of the draft and you're like, isn't he supposed to be like a second round guy? Like that's a perfectly fine place to be. But understand that applying that heuristic, that hey, isn't that guy supposed to, isn't Penix supposed to be kind of a late first, early second round guy? Why are the Vikings talking to him? Do you see the issue with that, right? They should still do, I mean, you'll hear the phrase due diligence all the time, but they should do it, right? Like they should investigate him and come up with their own opinion. Because what if the crowd is wrong and you bring that guy in and the Penix threw like 100 passes at his workout for whatever they were trying to uncover for that. It could be like a stamina thing. It could be, how do you throw when you're tired? How well are those habits? If you had this bad habit when you were throwing in your college tape and then we didn't see it in the combine and pro day when you threw, let's make you throw 100 passes and see if that habit comes back when you're tired. That's my guess for what that's for. And what if you got a really good answer to that question? What if it didn't? And you're like, oh, wow, this dude's just a different dude than what he was on tape. Now we're way more into him. You're going to want to know that, right? Like, and if he got tired and bad habits returned, you're going to want to know that. Even if there is you don't really see it as a chance that you're going to take that guy because you're super sure that you're going to trade up to 3 and get McCarthy or May. Like maybe that's the situation. And again, like you and I, we don't really get to know where they're at on that, but just like come with me on this hypothetical. Let's say that they have already they've already agreed to enough terms of trade where they know they're going to get up to 3, 4, or 5. And the negotiation is just which it is and how much it's going to cost, right? So let's say they know they're going to get May, they're going to get McCarthy, they're going to get one of these two guys. The idea that you would just not meet with Penix or Jayden Daniels is insane to me because it's not set in stone yet and you have uncertainty. You want to have the information on hand so that you can make an informed decline. If you're going to decline that guy, you want to be informed when you do it. That's the whole idea. And I feel like I'm stating the obvious in a big, big way, but like, I guess not, because people are reacting to the news that they're meeting with Jayden Daniels as though it's like, oh my God, they're going to draft Jayden Daniels. It's like, they still probably, like, I still kind of think he's a commander, but they're just getting information. The top 30 visits too, again, we see them as this is who the Vikings are high on. And that's not necessarily the case. This is guys they feel they want more information on. Either it's somebody they want to talk to about something, right? And maybe it's even somebody they want to talk to about a teammate, maybe. Or they want to talk to about like a certain play that was just, or a certain, not one play probably, but like a certain handful of situations that were hard to parse out. What were you thinking on this one? What was the pass rush on this one? Because it looks like you could have won, it looks like you could have won inside, but you didn't. We talked about that yesterday in great detail, that kind of dynamic. The Laiatu one, go check it out. But like if you're talking to a top 30 guy that's a tight end or whatever, it doesn't mean that they're high on tight end. Oh, they're going to take a tight end. Whoa, what does that mean about TJ Hawkinson? Like that's not where that's not what we're talking about here, especially if it's like day 3 guys. It's just a random depth guy we're thinking of. But if that's a tight end from Oregon, maybe they're asking him about Bo Nix, right? If it's just like, for example, if it's a random linebacker, yeah, it could be a guy that they're considering, but maybe he's got some off-field thing they want to ask him about. Maybe his coach said, yeah, this guy's good, but I don't know how coachable he is. And you want to get him in and see how coachable he is for yourself. Get a read on the guy. I would bet my life that a lot of a non-negligible number of those top 30 visits each year, that player walks out and everybody looks at each other and goes, nope. okay, now we know, done with it. And they use a top, quote unquote, top 30 visit on that. And the other thing is, if it's a local guy, this is a rule that some people don't know about. If it's a local guy, the top 30 visits, it doesn't count toward your like maximum allotted 30. That's the way that this works. You're allowed to have private workout meetings with 30 prospects. But if they are local to your area, they do not count toward that 30. So the Vikings can do this with all the Gophers and all the Augustana University, shout out CJ Ham, all of the, Minnesota Mankato guys that they want. But if you're bringing in a guy from Washington, then that's a little bit harder. So, look, does Jayden Daniels meeting with the Vikings mean something? If you really want to read into the they're bothering to do it, so they clearly aren't already 100% sure that Jayden Daniels is going to be a Commander, I guess you can draw that conclusion, but you can't draw that conclusion any more certain than, okay, I guess we're less than 100% sure. Maybe we're only 99% sure. And if you're only 99% sure, it's absolutely worth spending the time on a workout with the guy, considering how big this decision is. And hey, maybe you do get up to 3, right? And maybe the Commanders actually take Drake May. You want to know really well how you feel about Jayden Daniels in that situation. And if you can't guarantee that you're not going to be in that situation, yeah, do your homework. But finding a way, the other thing Kwesi talked about was like flexibility and options. I want to talk about that next, and then we'll actually get into a little bit of like nitty gritty with Jayden Daniels himself as a prospect at the end of the show. Today's episode of Locked On Vikings is brought to you by eBay Motors. eBay Motors is a great place to find anything that your car needs. And your car is a part of your life. It's a part of your character. It is who you are. Your car is an extension. It might as well be a part of your wardrobe, right? It's your style. It is the thing that gets you from point A to point B, the needs of your lifestyle, whether you have a big truck or you have like a nice luxury sedan or something that fits your whole family. Like what you drive is who you are. And taking care of that is really important. With over 122 million parts for that ride or die, eBay Motors has you covered no matter what you need. You will always find exactly what you're looking for. And with the eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to actually fit your car, your make and your model, and having a compatible part that can be a horrible jungle to navigate. eBay's got you covered for all of that. With all of the parts you need at the prices you want, it is so easy to take care of your car in the way that your car deserves. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers. Moving on to the more philosophical part of the Locked On Vikings podcast. Hey, when you're done here, go to the 24/7 YouTube stream at Locked On Minnesota Sports. All things Minnesota sports, 24/7, all the time. Roundtables and parties, and not to mention the actual daily shows like this one and Locked On Timberwolves, Twins, Wild, Gophers, etc. You can find all of that at the Locked On Minnesota Sports YouTube channel, or this will just kick you right over there when it's done if you're watching it when it premieres live at 8 a.m. Central Time every Monday through Friday. That's when we premiere here on Locked On Vikings. So, again, with decision-making under uncertainty. So, think of like anything where you have to come up with an idea of risk, right? It might rain. Should I make a tee time? That kind of thing, right? You have to think in outcomes and what ifs rather than just thinking about risk. Risk is a part of it, and probabilistic thinking is a part of it. But I think the best way is to think in outcomes for that like simplistic example. It might rain. It's a 50-50 chance of rain, just to make it simple. So if it does rain, do I want to be golfing? Yes, of course. If it doesn't rain, do I want to be golfing? Maybe. Or if maybe it's an exact no, and then your chances of making of having a good Saturday are equivalent to the chances of rain. You got a 50-50 and you have to decide what you want to do. But there's a bunch of chances in that like setup for things to not be exactly even. And then that's where you make your decision. And that's how you find a decision under uncertainty. Because if it's 50-50 to rain, yeah, the decision is hard. If it's 20% to rain, make that tee time. You got an 80% chance for it to work out, right? Yeah, go for it. There it is. Assuming that you don't have too much like of a non-refundable deposit or whatever that gets in the way of this. But maybe that can be the thing that makes the decision for you. Like, to me, the process of decision making isn't just about doing the thing that in hindsight found you the best result, which is too often the way that we talk about it. it's a process. And like part of that process that we just did, like just thinking through that golf example, was like, we're identifying what's important to us, right? That's a really important part of this. Identifying what about the outcome actually matters and how much it matters and how to prioritize those things, right? Like with the golf example, what matters to us? Well, does golfing on Saturday matter that much to us? Or do we really, really want to because we love it, or we have a tournament coming up and we feel like we really need to get one in? Maybe we'll force the issue. We'd be more willing to take risks. How important is that to you? Or is it just like, that could be something to do on Saturday, but if it rains, we'll see a movie. Like, and it doesn't matter to you at all, right? Like that's part of the decision-making calculus that most of our brains do pretty automatically without us really like thinking about it. But that can be part of what makes the decision for you, not to mention the chances of those certain outcomes happening, i.e., is it they're going to be weather? What's the chance of rain? But identifying how much we would dislike it if it is raining. Some people are fine to golf in the rain. Some people absolutely hate it. How much does that matter? Does it need to be, if it's a little drizzle, it's fine, and then now we've suddenly changed it. What if there's a 50-50 chance of rain, but in that rain, some of it, there's a 50-50 chance that it's heavy or light. And if we're okay with light, we just made it a 75-25 chance of our Saturday golf being ruined. Now that feels a lot better and we can make the decision that way. So I'll give you that easier example because that I think is the way that Kwesi's thinking about the draft. He's thinking in outcomes. And I think the skill in it is being able to think in every possible outcome and not miss any. So yeah, you're going to think in the outcome where you strike out on trading up, you don't get a QB, and you're on the clock at 11, are we going to take Penix in that place? Are we going to take an edge rusher or a corner in that place? What's our board look like in that place? And honestly, like a horizontal big board is sort of designed in that headspace where you've got all of this is the way teams do their big board. You can they'll blur them out, but you can see what they're doing. They'll have QBs ranked, running backs ranked, wide receivers ranked, and so on and so forth. And maybe even like ordered based on what positions they want. In terms of like tiers, these are the guys we'd trade up for. These are the guys we'd trade down for. These are the guys we'd stick and pick at, like for every round. Right. And then you spend a lot of the work is simulating. And this is what front offices will do. Rick Spielman talked about this all the time publicly. And my understanding is that some version of this process happens in front offices all over the country, which is they'll basically like mock draft with each other. They'll say, okay, let's simulate, let's say, consider the situation where it goes Caleb Williams, Jayden Daniels, Drake May, and the Patriots didn't trade up with us. JJ McCarthy is on the clock. And this is the situation where Arizona is willing to trade down with us, but the Giants have offered something. They've offered a first round pick in 2025 to move up, and Arizona is telling us that they need our 2025 first in addition to 11 and 23, or they won't do the deal. And now we all sit and we talk and we say, okay, we're on the clock. What would we do in this situation? Would we do it? Would we not do it? And hey, that's in the eye of the beholder. And then you come up with a decision, you write it down so that if that situation comes up, you've already thought it through and you just go to your notes and say, yeah, we said we'd do that. Let's do that. Right. And the chances of that happening are however slim, right? But the cost of that situation now is nothing. We've got it set up. We've already considered the cost of that. We're not going to be taken by surprise if that kind of thing happens. And I think where you get in trouble in the draft, and if I'm going to try to like really speculate, this is where I think Spielman went wrong in 2011 with Ponder, is the situation where it went like, Gabbert went and Jake Locker went and like all of these top guys went and the Vikings were sort of left with QBs they didn't feel as good about, didn't seem like a situation that they were prepared for. And so they made a decision sort of more impulsively without the time to really think through the consequences of it. Either that, or they just had a super wrong evaluation on Christian Ponder, which happens all the time and doesn't necessarily mean that their process was messed up. They just they missed, and it happens. But that's the decision-making calculus. So when I hear things from Kwesi like, oh yeah, we want flexibility. That's because they want to be able to handle as many of those possible outcomes as possible and have as many of those outcomes as possible be acceptable, right? If it's 50-50 to rain on Saturday and you're worried about if you're going to golf, bring an umbrella, because now you're set if it rains or if it doesn't. This is just them bringing umbrellas for everything. It doesn't mean that if they bring in Penix for a visit, doesn't mean, they really like they're going to draft Penix. It means that they want to be informed on if they have to make a decision about that, which is a pretty good likelihood that they're going to have to. So yeah, bring him in. But I'm sick of seeing like draft visits and having them treated like they're news about what the pick's going to be. The visit could go bad too. That's all that is. Next up, let's talk a little bit about Jayden Daniels. Since he is going to do a private meeting with the Vikings, let's talk about who he is and kind of what is making him this like probable second overall pick that a lot of people don't get it. Let's talk about it. That'll come up next. Jayden Daniels, LSU quarterback. When I went through all of my quarterback watching, and I'm not going to rank them, really. Like, we've got that top 3 tier, and we all understand it. But if I had the first overall pick, Jayden Daniels was the one and I felt was the most, like, pro-ready. The one that I would feel has the best chance to step on the field and be successful. A lot of people super disagree with me on that, and that's okay, right? This is all a very, very subjective thing. But the reason for that is explosiveness. And, when you're trying to have a successful offense, when you're trying to have a Super Bowl team, explosiveness can cover up so many problems. We want to talk about thinking in outcomes, right? There are many outcomes where you're in a game and a bad fumble happens or something and it ruins the game, right? Dalvin Cook fumbles in overtime, it wrecks the game and all that stuff. Or think of it this way, you took a sack on second down. That outcome will often ruin the drive. But what if it doesn't? What if that's an okay outcome? Suddenly, everyone's job got a lot easier, right? You can give up a sack on second down and still score a touchdown there, make that not matter. That opens you up to more outcomes being seen as successful ones. Beautiful, right? And Jayden Daniels has so much explosiveness to his game, both in the air and the ground. So the thing about Jayden Daniels that everybody loves the most is that he can just house one from 70, like getting pressure, man coverage on all those LSU receivers. They're like trying to man up, cover one it, and if he gets pressure, he can just take off and go, right? And that is an incredibly explosive situation that defensive coordinators like won't want to play man coverage because of, and now you had all these really good receivers, going up against zone coverage, and suddenly, you can slice and dice, because like the reason for that is defenses. If you're in man coverage, if you're a DB in man coverage, your back's going to be to the quarterback. So you're not even going to realize that it's a scramble until it's like far too late. And what angle are you going to have? Zone coverage, eyes on the QB. You're going to be able to rally to him. You're going to be able to limit that all the time. But it's like not as good of coverage, right? Interestingly, when I was watching, LSU did not get as much zone coverage as I kind of thought they would get. And so there was a lot of plays where it was just like man coverage and oops, Jayden Daniels ran for 40. Like, okay, we can take that, I guess. That said, I wrote down it was flummoxing. That was the word I chose. Because he definitely uses that as a crutch. He is definitely an eyedropper in a way that somebody like Caleb Williams or Drake May kind of isn't. And honestly, that's probably a big reason that a lot of people will have those two above Jayden Daniels. It doesn't bug me like nearly as much as some of the other stuff I've talked about with like May. And none of that stuff bugs me like a ton. So it's not a huge deal to me, but you should know that there is kind of sign of trouble. I'm looking to run. But one of the things that mitigates it for me, because that does like in general, if you just have a bad habit where you're just like, the first sign of trouble and you're scrambling, and that's super unsustainable in the league because, hey, these guys are as fast as, suddenly the edge rushers are as fast as you, and it doesn't work as well. Welcome to the NFL. But one of the things that I think mitigates it for me with LSU, and it's something I never see talked about, LSU scramble drills were not regular scramble drills. So when you do the scramble, you want to watch a scramble drill, watch Caleb Williams. USC was like practiced at it. Of course they were. Their quarterback is Caleb Williams. But most teams have, I should probably plug the wide left article I wrote about exactly this too, if you want to go to Arif's Substack, which is bad, but you should read my article on it. But the idea of a scramble drill, essentially like receivers will be given an instruction. When you see if you look back at the QB, you're looking for the ball and you see the QB is scrambling. You flow the direction he is flowing because he's probably broken the pocket to the left or the right. You go to the left or the right. And then you work away from your coverage. And some teams will have this be like the outside guy works toward the quarterback and the inside guy works away from the quarterback to create a high-low on the sideline that he's running to so that he has something he can read, or vice versa. Like one guy goes deep, one guy goes shallow, right? Or you just have it work away from the coverage because it's pretty unlikely that you're going to have two guys in the same leverage on two receivers on the same side. Like defenses don't really like to do that for like fairly obvious reasons. If you're only covering deep, they're just going to catch it underneath you, right? Or vice versa. If you're only covering shallow, that's a disaster. Somebody messed up. So that's the way that like normal scramble drills go. And if you go to there are the playbooks that I've been able to see that have scramble drills in them over years and years and years. Some of them are, 10, maybe even 20 years old. Some of them are from last year. Some of them are college, NFL, whatever I've been able to see just because I've been able to ask someone and yeah, I'll send you the 2018, whatever. They all look super, super similar. Scramble drills are very universal things. So we are very used to seeing when a quarterback breaks the pocket, wide receivers do their scramble thing. And then either the quarterback keeps his eyes up, finds something, and it's a very cool play, or the quarterback drops his eyes to whoever's directly in front of him and looks to run. And if you're the latter, that gets you lit up in the NFL, right? Especially Jayden Daniels, who has a propensity to get lit up in very funny ways. That gets you limited, right? If you don't have that scramble drill. But what was interesting about LSU is their receivers didn't do that. Their receivers immediately went to blocking. As soon as they saw Jayden Daniels was out, they went, this is now Jayden Daniels is going to run. We're going to block. And if you're coaching it they were coached that way. That was not just an instinct they did because they gave up on ever getting the ball. No, this is a very purposeful, planned thing. They probably drilled it and said, okay, scramble, look to block, scramble, look to block. They would be coached to do that because of Jayden Daniels' ability. Of course, we're just going to lean into it. And to their credit, they got a bunch of 40-yard explosive plays. Seems to work. Not only did we get caught in man coverage and Jayden Daniels escaped the pocket and now he's running up, he's got blockers now? Oh no. I get it. I totally get why they would do it that way. That seems like a really cool plan. And honestly, if you're the team that's got Jayden Daniels, I don't think that's a bad plan in the pros either. But you have to understand that that's going to change the ratio of times he drops his eyes versus not. And the way that I would parse that is, okay, so that definitely will give him a habit to drop his eyes. But if you want to ask the question, he's an older prospect, right? So we have to ask the question, same way we asked it of Nix and Penix, right? If he didn't learn it by now, why should we believe he'll learn it in the pros? They might not have tried to teach it to him. So maybe we can learn it in the pros. But it's a negative for sure, right? Don't get me wrong. It's a negative. He's an eyedropper. I wrote it down his running is a crutch to him for sure. But what I like about the way he processes downfield, you can see that experience downfield for sure. Where when he is trying to read a coverage shell, to me at least, I saw him throwing against defenders, not two receivers, which is something I talked about with Penix as well. In that he is throwing against the DB's leverage and trusting that his receivers are going to run it down. And look, your receivers are Brian Thomas, Malik Neighbors. Both these guys might be first rounders. So sure, man, I get it. You're going to place your faith in those guys, but there's an element of maximizing where you're putting the ball in a place that's going to put that receiver as far away from a defender as possible when he catches the ball. And therefore, you're going to maximize the after catch opportunity for somebody like Malik Neighbors, who's known for that, okay, we're synergizing, right? That's understanding what your receiver's skill set is and understanding the leverage he's working at and understanding how to maximize that player. You're not making him come back through a defender, right? You're leading him away. That is what excites me the most about his game. If you want to talk about like the actual throws, there are a ton of fades on the LSU tape. They ran slot fade over and over and over and over and over again to these receivers. They spammed it. And hey, it's a really good go ball. It's an incredible go ball. So if you get Jayden Daniels in your building, guess what? You're running slot fade to Justin Jefferson all the time. We take those. That sounds awesome. I am in for that. It's such a large percentage that I've even seen people look at that and be like, why does he only run fades? And to me, that just doesn't concern me at all. Like, because they're good at it. Like, yeah, they do it because they score a bunch of touchdowns doing it. Would you not? And it's like that like old adage of scouting, which is like, don't worry about what the guy didn't do. Like, look at what the guy does do and evaluate that. Like, yeah, weren't a bunch of like, I don't know, post corners out there. Who cares? They were killing them with a slot fade. Why would they move away from it? The question would be, if a team does, go into 3, middle of the field closed all the time, and or I guess like cover 4, right? Because the other thing is Jayden Daniels doesn't throw enough over the middle, which I don't really agree with. I think I saw plenty to me to show that it's fine. It's just that there's a lot of sideline passes because that was the good ball, and that's harder to defend. But let's say that they super sell out and they leave the middle of the field open and they, they play like Tampa 2 or something like that. So you can get that post route. Can he still get it? I think he can still get it. He can still punish that, right? It's not one of those things where this is the only pass he can throw, and if you take it away, he falls apart. Never really saw that. That's, I don't know, some of my things on Jayden Daniels. It's not, that's not comprehensive by any means. If you want a comprehensive Jayden Daniels thing, or as comprehensive as I will get, you can go to patreon.com/LukeBraunNFL. There is a free to watch video on Jayden Daniels. You can go check that out and join me on Patreon if you enjoy it. I would appreciate that very much. I will see you all next week. I think I said that yesterday because I forgot what day it was. In my defense, it was technically Thursday when I was recording that. Anyways, I'll see you all next week. And as always, Skull.